This type of Yerushalmi Maseches Eruvin article also edition of Mamash Atab Zayin and Aleph. First words, Bon Kamoy, which in the Vilna is on Mem Gimel base, the fourth line down, Bon Kamoy. And said Meshias, I'm not sure if this is what Rabbi Yasa heard that they were asking Shmuel in Bavel before he came to Eretz Yisrael, or now that Rabbi Yasa came to Eretz Yisrael, they're asking him himself. So Bon Kamoy, whoever they're asking for, if you have two chatzeros, one next to each other, and they didn't do an Eruv, can one be Mavato Rishus to the other? Or but Rishus only houses in a chatzer. Can it go from chatzer to chatzer, or only houses in a chatzer? So Armaloni said to them, "Mevatlin rishus mi chatzer lechatzer." You can't mevatlin rishus from chatzer lechatzer. It's also effective in lieu of an eruv from one chatzer to another chatzer. Bon come Rabbi Yasser. That's Rabbi Yasser. Hechmat Amar Tamon. Just like you say over there, but kalim shishabsu bechatzer, and with kalim which are in were in a chutzner from a time Shabbos began. Without some chutzner, you can carry them throughout the chutzner, even though there's no Erev Chatzeros. The Kavasah, so to Kalim Sheshabsu b'Mavli. What's the story similarly with Kalim which were to be in a Mavli at the beginning of Shabbos? Without some Mavli, you can get a Mavli on Shabbos or not. Now, the next word says Ubi Shabbos. Could be you have to change it to B'Shabbos. Some version too, but the point is it's not the day of Shabbos, but Masechah Shabbos. And it's fascinating. They didn't want to answer a question on Kalim, even though it's about carrying them on Shabbos. When they learned Masechah Shabbos, he made them wait to learn until they were learning Eruvin, which is even though Eruvin is about on Shabbos. No, there's a Masechah Eruvin question. And B'Shabbos Shalei v'Lo when they asked a question when they learned Masechah Shabbos, they didn't respond. The low Rabbi Yassi Amar. Rabbi Yassi would only say, it's like Rabbi Yassi, the low Rabbi Yassi Amar, Rabbi Yassi would not only say, Elakom Milo Milo Basrei. Each and every word in its proper place. And he said, this is not the proper place to ask the question. Evidently, for when we record this down for posterity, either in writing or in our memories, this to be cataloged properly. So, therefore, the next word is Kach. Reb Chaim changes to Kad. When the Asun Eruvin, when they came to Eruvin, alone, then he answered them. He said, Shem came Sheshabs in the Mavi, came which were in the Mavi from Erev Shabbos, Tasa Mavi can carry them throughout the Mavi. Okay, but how far? Rav Amar Em telling us El Bar Mambas. Rav says you only go 4 Amos with them, no more. Rabbi Yisrael Boon, I skipped the line. Kadasim was every Amalam B'Shem Rabbi Yechon came to Shabbos b'Mavi Tadlos and Mavi. I didn't skip a line. I just didn't translate properly. There's a came Shabbos Mavi Tadlos and Mavi throughout the Mavi. Rav Amar Em Tadlos and Ba'arbamas. Rav said he only carried them 4 Amos. So it says throughout the Mavi, no restrictions. Rav said only 4 Amos. What's the machlekes? It says Gemara Rabbi Yossi Bun. Rabbi said Rav Kedaita Rabbi Yochanan Kedaita. They both follow their known perspectives. Rabbi Yochanan says a korah permits carrying in a mavi without shituf, makes it all one unit. So therefore, even though there's no shituf, have you done matan b'chol mavi? It's can carry throughout the entire mavi. Rav Damar ain't korah muteres below shituf. Rav said a korah does not, the beam in the front of the mavi does not permit you to carry without shituf. So heavy duam, I said aim tali bel arbama. So if you only have the korah without the shituf, so therefore you only carry with 4 amos. So it says when Rabbi Yochanan lays it over mishtat lechol mavi. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, why do you need a shituf avos if even without a shituf you can carry them throughout the mavi? Rabbi Yossi Rabbi this is good. They also kosher achas, or to make all the shirs one. In other words, you can carry the mavi from the chatzeros, right? There's the Korban says shemuta talto b'mavi amin ekem sheshabsu b'bayis. No, it literally means the bayis because it's a chatzar as well. And the shtu mavos to carry from the chatzeros into the mavos, not to carry in the mavi itself, where you could carry as long as there's a korah lechi without restriction, even without the shituf. Again, kelim shavsu by mavi, not kelim shkei from elsewhere. Okay, next Gemara, the existing perushim are very difficult because all of them come up against a big question. Because it would seem that the question Gemara is asking is the major question, which we spoke about several times in the past, which is, do we pass a Meir Rabbanan, whether you can, you need to have both Erev and Shitav, or does just one suffice? And we already Okay, and there's another interpretation. The question is whether about the substance he used. Uh, where the bread works for both. He needs specifically wine for shituv, whatever. So I think the pshat is like this: that the question is based on the previous sugya which we had about when one of the people forgot to participate in Erev Chatzeros. So pshita, it's pashut. When one person from the Chatzer forgot to participate in the Eruv, so then, if you did shituv as well, so then we say, okay, you can rely on the shituv to cover that one person. But the question is when there's when there's no erev chatzeros at all, when they all forgot. So then, do we rely on the erev chatzeros? Do I understand the votes for both? So they offer, is there a possibility that even though normally we don't rely, you need both, is there a possibility that sometimes we rely on the shitufe on the shituf for and the mov, which made in movi for the chatzeros? Now, it's also an open shut case. No, because he said only one of the people on the inside forgot. One of the people on the inside forgot, not if they all forgot. So Yaakov Barach with the both of them said, B'Shem B'Shem Rukva, and one said Rukva, B'Shem Nachem Bar Yehuda. He says, well, no, there is she tufe the small shituv chatzeros b'Shabbos harishonim midoichak. So if there, as the Korbanei says, im lo irvu machmas oines, b'davka Shabbos rishona, kamech lo tishtachel Torah tzeiv. So they said yes, there is a heter. A fascinating thing. Even though we normally pass Meir that you need both shittiv and erev, and the kula which we saw till now was only where one of the people forgot to participate in the erev. No, the shittiv for one Shabbos. I guess that is Masorah. You can rely on the shituf, even if everybody forgot to participate in the erev. That's what we're saying. Now I'll tell you the way the art school learns it, which is I don't know if it's what it brings it down the name of. Is it Bnei Moshe? It's not exactly Bnei Moshe. Anyway, so it's a Pshita Nismag, going back, Pshita Nismag Shituv Mavli. We know by Mavli if they had a prior partnership, B'Yayin, B'Shem, we had, so you can rely on that. Masma Shituv Chatzeros can rely on a Shituv, a similar partnership when they forgot to do the bread for Shabbos, but they had a similar partnership on the Chatzeros. They had partners in wine or oil, and they want to do an Erev on that basis. Beyond that, Rabbi Yaakov Rachel, Rabbi Zira Tavim, Chabashem, Marco, Chabashem, now said, but you said, the small Shituv Chatzeros Shabbos Yishona. For one Shabbos, can rely on that. On a pre-existing partnership in some substance, if it's there was an oines which didn't allow them to be mishtate properly to the to do an Erev properly, they can rely on the partnership which they had in some other form which pre-existed. Okay, so in any event, the Gemara says, Rabbi Yosef B'Shem Rabbi said, "Kidein inchi bar delay t'shem makpino brutason." It's it's like you have to be from those people and not makpid on each other on their prutos. The question is what this means. So here I have to be honest and tell you that the art school shot, whether accepted in previous or not, is clearly what we're going on here, and also that the Gilin Shas and the name of the Ravid and the art school changed the girsa to Shem Makpidin al Prusosan, and they're on their prusos, their sliced bread. So and Anshe by the layer people a certain place. So Anshe by the layer the Makpidin al Prusosan. So this talk about again was no Erev Chatzeros. I didn't have and Makpidin Prusosan means they were not makpid that their bread should be whole. They had only cup bread, so they couldn't use that to make Erev Chatzeros. So, they could rely on their shutfus, right? They had that they would when they had evidently they're not makpid on their the use of their bread by each other. They cut bread by each other. They didn't have whole loaves. They had a lot of cut bread, and they were makbid. So therefore, that's a prior shutfus, which exists among them, which works for a Shabbos. So again, like we said before, for the Shabbos Yerushalmi Eruvin. Now it seems there's a subtext here, which is that, but they have to stipulate that they're relying on this shutfus in lieu of Erev Chatzeres. Again, according to the assumption that the Gemaras are connected for that one Shabbos they're using it. Rabbi Bob Shem Rabbi said a few local ananche by delay the Shem Pusasa. No, even a scenario where it's not like people by delay, and it's not an issue of their not Makar Pusasa, but therefore they have a partnership. And again, the subtext seems to be that they have to stipulate that they're relying on their partnership, because tiny. There was a story where they were sitting Erev Shabbos as Shabbos came in the airspace of a chotzer. Now, the Yerushalmi Kibshuta wants to say, wait a minute, if it's airspace of a chotzer, why are you mentioning that? So he wants to say that the whole story is really about Shitufim Mavos, not about Erev Chatzeros. Erev Chatzeros, Yitaka need the bread. But this is about Shitufim Mavos, because it's saying the chotzer, but I don't think it's chotzer, it's dafka. And Shabbos began, and then made an Eruv. As Uvdakum Shmuel, the story came from Shmuel. Came and she's since they started eating together with the Tavshil. They started before Shabbos, getting on Shabbos, and it's Mapa Makadesh, whatever they did. So since they started Mil Yom, or perhaps they just collected to eat it before Shabbos, and they were one collective entity, Mutter. So it's permissible. Hadamara. So it's telling us, even if they're not one of the houses, because the Eruv normally has to be in a house. No, even they're Avir Chatzer, but they're in this common group. Hadam Rafilu Irvu tells us even they didn't make an Eruv, right, because they're relying on this. Hadam Rafilu Kivnu, even they didn't have it in mind, because they only thought of it afterwards. So therefore, we see all these things are automatic. You don't need even stipulation that this could work, and I assume it's specifically for that one Shabbos, said before. Hadamara, now, a lot of Mepharshim say this line is not relevant here. It should not be here. It's brought down right here. Agav Urach of another sugya. But Reb Chaim, who says it is relevant, does try to interpret it here. It gives two interpretations. But his first interpretation is that you don't. You need to have the bread on the table. So it sounds like they didn't. According to him, they didn't actually start eating yet. They had the top on the table was sitting there. They didn't start from. Yeah, he says Shekvar Kovus who doesn't be. But he says a pashal shulchan, right? I'm not sure it's the bread. It sounds like we're talking about a partnership in the tavshil, not in the pas. So I'm not sure, but he says pas. Why he says specifically bread. But in any event, because it seems like to be the one Shabbos case where you can rely on the shituf in some other substance, even though it's not a whole loaf of bread there. But in any event, so he says, but the idea is that you need to have common meal on the table. It's not a fact that they're enough that they're all gathered together there. The fact that many rishus are using this one rishus is not enough. There has to be something which fixes them together, which is the unity in the bread, the food on the table. Okay, so it tells us also this idea that we can rely on the shituf chatzeros again. That pshat which we're going to that the shituf is in lieu of the eruv. The fact that they have this partnership is sufficient for that. If they for one, it works for one Shabbos. Okay, new issue. Pshita, Erev Tzorch Bayis. Erev has to be in the house. Can't be in the Chutzer, it has to be in the house, in the houses. Shita Maushir Tzorch Bayis. The Shita of take place in the house. Milsa de Rav, Omra Erev Tzorch Bayis. Milsa Shmuel Mar Shita of Tzorch Bayis. The words of Rav, which evidently, except according to Reb Chaim, will tell you words of Rav, which Yerushalmi knew, but we don't know, told us that Erev requires a house, and the Shmuel Amar Shituf Tzarech Bayis, and the Shmuel said Shituf also requires a house. The way Reb Chaim suggests to fix the girsa here is Milsa de Rav Amra Shituf Tzorch Bais, Milsa de Shmuel Amar Shituf Ein Tzorch Bais. Okay, so the again he changes Eruv in Rav to Shituf. Milsa Rav Amar Shituf Tzorch Bais, and Milsa de Shmuel is Amar. He puts in the word after Shituf Ein Tzorch Bais. She does not require a house. Okay, so then Mastis the way he changed the next line is not Masnisa de Shmuel Polig Alave, but Masnisa Pagi Lave de Shmuel. The following Bryce seems to argue on Shmuel. It's not Shituf. It's not really a brisa. It's a statement of Amoraim, actually. But I guess actually the statement, I guess the next two words maybe are the brisa, actually, because it says Shituf nosta b'beis shar. A Shituf, you can put it into a base shar. So so it sounds like it dafka has to be, the way Reb Chaim is learning it, it dafka has to be in a base shar, not in the chutzner. Even though Beis Shar is not really a bais, Beis Shar is a gatehouse, but that's you have to put it in a structure. If you learn without Reb Chaim's Gersa, you learn with that Shmuel Amar Shituf Tzarch Bais. So then it's much more straightforward. Masisa the Shmuel Plag Alave or the Masnisa that you learn according to Taka, which Reb Chaim's Gersa. Masisa Plag Alave the Shmuel, because it says that Shituf Nosa Beis Shar. Like according to Ada says. No, the Tanya Brisa Shituf Nosa Fil Beis Shar, right? And I guess that's the Brisa. And B'Shem Rabbi Yochanan added on. He said Nosa Bein Ba'avir Chatzar Bein Ba'avir Bais. He says Nosa Shituf Shemavi Bein Ba'avir Chatzar Bein Ba'avir Mavi. You can put it now. You can put it in the Avir Chatzar. You can put it in the Avir Mavi. Below Zav Zukamar. So that is arguing on Shmuel, right? Because Shmuel said it has to be in the house. The Brisa said you can put it in Beis Shar. And Rabbi Yochanan says not just the Beis Shar, but even Avir Chatzar, Avir Mavui. And again, it works much more glatt if you say, like the case we have in front of us, that Shmuel Amar Shituf Tzarch Mavui, the Bais, and not the Brisa and Rabbi Yochanan arguing. So let's go back and learn it that way without the Reb Chaim. So it's just clear to try to have the Gemara in front of us. Shita Erev Tzarch Bais, Shita Maushir Tzarch Bais, Milsa Rav Amar Erev Tzarch Bais, but not Shituf. Milsa Shmuel Amar Shituf Tzarch Bais. Again, we don't know what he said it, but there's some story that way. Masnisa the Shmuel Pliga Love. This Masnisa Pliga Love the Shmuel, the way Kormei learns it. Shituf Nosa Beis Shar, Kapadim Beis Shar. And Barchia, Rabbi Avo, Shem Yoch said Nosa Bein Ba'avir Chatzar Bein Ba'avir Mavi, which of course means also you don't need a bais. Okay, so that's the next Mishnah. You have two chatzeros, one behind the other one. So this is the railroad flat case. Let's go. There's a picture here. Right, the two houses in this chutzner to that chutzner, and this chutzner to go out through that chutzner to get to the mavui. Okay. So Shrein says if the inner one made an Eruv and not the outer one. Hapnimus Uteres, the permitted one is permitted. So the outer one is also. Obviously the inner one can carry on its own, and the outer one is also because it has Drisas Regel on the outer one to get to the Mavi. If the outer one made an Eruv and not the inner one, Shnei Masuros. They're both also. Because the Drisas Regel of the inner one, which houses the outer one, and the inner one itself didn't make an Eruv. So they made an Eruv each one separately, then they're cutting themselves off from each other. And each one is permitted on its own, of course not together. The Kiva answers the outer one, even in this case, the Drisas Regel, the Drisas Regel of the The inner one, the inner one answers the outer one. Chachomerim on the whole Mishnah, not just on this last case. Ain't Jesus a regular seres, as Moshe points out. Upliki nami a Tanakama. They argue also in the Tanakama. Shafiu regular surmi klema, even the access of an chotzer which is also in its place. Says here where the chitzonim made erev, not the inner one. The outer one made the erev, not the inner one. Eno says the chitzonim doesn't answer the outer one. B'achim meisik also magmara, and that's what the Gemara concludes there. It's according to Bavli. The shloshim machlekes over there, 3 machlekes. Tanakama savar. Tanakama holds regular says mikayma, a regular which is also in its place. He shows says shlo mikayma. In other words, if the inner one didn't make an eruv, then it answers the outer one. A regular with teres mikayma, if the inner one made its own eruv separately, and the outer one made its own eruv separately, Eno says doesn't answer. So if you regular with teres, even the when the pnimis made an eruv in its own and the chitzon on its own, Oser answers the outer one. When Savidil Olam Indrisa regular Oser never does access Aser. I feel regular Shlomikema, even one which is also in its own place, where the Pnimis didn't make an Erev, ain't Oser Shlomikema, doesn't Aser in Shlomikema, Valocha Kit Tanakama. That was like Tanakama, they both made Erevin, they both are okay. If only the outer one made an Erev, the inner one it's not okay. And only the inner one made Erev, it's okay for itself, but the outer one is Aser. Rabbi Yosef said, the Gemara. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Kivahi. So, in other words, not like Rabbi Kiva himself, but the meaning of Tanakama holds Rabbi Kiva as a concept of Jerisas Arego. But according to Tanakama, Jerisas Arego, only Jerisas Arego, which is Asur Bim Koima, that the Pnimis didn't make an error for itself, Asurs. According to Rabbi Kiva, even Jerisas Arego Muteres Bim Koima, even though the Pnimi made an error for itself, it's still Asurs, like Rabbi Yana is going to explain. So Rabbi said Rabbi Kiva, both Tanakama and Rabbi Kiva hold the principle of Rabbi Kiva, the Drisas Regel Oseris, right? The Rabbi Law B'Shem Rabbi Yana, Drisas Regel Asura V'Oseris. So what Tanakama holds is that only Drisas Regel Asura Oseris, meaning where the Pnimis didn't make an error at all, but Drisas Regel Muteres, which is they made it, Pnimis made its own error, so then it doesn't answer the Chitzona, which made its own error. It's only as a conscious. Rabbi Akiva holds any Drisas Regel, which is her Muteres, answers the outer one. Okay, Aloha Sholach Echad Min HaChitzona V'lo Irev, let's say one of the people in the outer courtyard forgot to make an error, participate in error. So Pnimis Muteres, the Pnimis is Muteres because they can shut themselves off, and the outer one is Asur. Pnimis lo Irev, but if the inner one, according to one of the inner ones forgot to participate in error, Shtei Asuras, then they're both Asur because now the Pnimis has a problem. Right, and so now it's Drisas Regel, therefore answers the outer one. Nas Erev Makom Echad. So they made Erev with each other, and they put the Erev in one of them. Right. In other words, they all made an Erev together, and they put an Erev in one, whether the inner or the outer the house, one of the inner or outer yards. Shach Echad, and one of the people, Beim Pnimis Melech Yitzayna, forgot V'lo Irev. Right, he didn't participate. Shtei Asuras, they're also because they all became one corporate entity, and one of them forgot to participate in Erev. V'mayu shechidim eino tzorichem l'Arev. If they're individuals, they don't have to make an Erev, which is a very cryptic thing. What it means. So first, we see the Korban Eidah. I'll give you another shot. And he says that. There's one person in each yard. Okay, it's not to chutzah with two houses, one house in each yard. They don't have to make an error with each other. Since it's an individual. And therefore, so he doesn't require an error if the pnimis is regel muteris by definition. Ve'ena oseris, doesn't ask the other one. Ustamak Rabbanan, this time Mishnah Rabbanan that regular Muteres Mukoima doesn't answer the other one. But but if there are two people, even in the outer courtyard, even though the inner one is Muteres, but not Muteres to an Eruv, only because it's one person, no, because we then we don't allow then they inner one asers. Why? Because we make zera. Dim asa mishnayim b'pnius. You might come to imatir the reverse case where there are two in the inner one who didn't make an eruv, and one in the outer one. So therefore, only if it's one on one. That's the Korban Eidos pshat. There's the Yerushalmi Pshuto wants to say that our Mishnah is going like Akiva, and Rabbi Akiva's moida that Dris Regel Hamuteres only answers if it's a rabbin. Okay, so therefore, in other words, yeah, there's a similar idea. But Dris says the Dris Regel Hamuteres even is only answers if it's a rabbin. Even Akiva answers Dris Regel Hamuteres specifically it's a more than one person on the inside, not if it's just one person. I guess it's a mislo shchicha or maybe some other reason, but an amen. That's another possible way of learning the Mishnah. One way is going Rabbanan, and the other is going like Rabbi Akiva. Okay, I think that ends us with the Amud for today.